Hey everybody, welcome back to Sounds Like a Drum, Cadence Independent Media Production, Cymbal Series Day. Today, we're talking about maybe my favorite part of the whole drum set, the hi-hat, and specifically how your setup relates to your sound. One of my favorite things about being friends with drummers and also with sitting in at jam sessions and stuff is seeing how other people like to set up their rigs and how it makes them play, or maybe how it facilitates their choices when they are making choices while they're playing. And I've particularly gone through maybe the most kind of variations over time to get where I'm at with the hi-hat, more so than any of the rest of the drum set, mainly because a lot of the music that I play is kind of hi-hat centric. I think that might be true for most of us to play drum set, but when you play a lot of pop music and funk music and jazz, you spend a lot of time with the hi-hat. So I want to talk today about settings and adjustments and just kind of maybe unconscious settings also that you've just like landed on in your life that result in a big part of the sound that you're making and what it means to experiment with those things. We're going to break it down into 3 sections, chapters, and basically we're going to start at the top of the stand and work our way down. So at the top, we're going to talk about the clutch. Now, we have talked about hi-hat setups and clutches and different things before a little bit, but we haven't talked about how it relates to the sound and playability of your setup. So that's what we're going to start with today. It's fair to say that we all know that the point of the clutch is to hold the top hi-hat cymbal so that we can manipulate it with our foot up and down and make sure that we can clamp them together nice and tight when we want to play the pair of cymbals with our sticks to get a tighter sound. Then, using our feet and stuff, we can splash the cymbals together and do a few different things with them additionally. And the tension, or rather how kind of compressed the felts are against that top cymbal, has more of an effect on the overall sound of your rig than you might think. First up, top cymbal by itself. I've lowered the bottom cymbal down so that it's not going to crash into it and you can just hear the top all by itself. We're going to do sort of my normal, like fairly loose but not overly loose setting that I like to use, and then we're going to tighten it down real tight and let's compare. It's pretty clear to me that one of these is super duper choked, compressed, a little bit hummy, stuff like that. And when you loosen up those felts a little bit, the cymbal can actually breathe the same way that clamping down a cymbal on a cymbal stand is going to change it in the exact same way, compressing everything about it and making it sound kind of thin. And I don't know, if you have hi-hat cymbals that you like the sound of, it's possible to take a lot of that great sound out just with the clutch by itself. Now, this tension also affects things in the context of a groove, so we're going to do a little back-to-back, starting with the loose setting and then moving to the tight. Now, as with everything here, this isn't about right and wrong, although if you do over-tighten the cymbals, it's possible that that can contribute to edge damage or possibly bell hole damage, depending on your clutch and the cymbals that you are using, things like that. So for me, I never go super tight with it, though some people do prefer that, both for the feel of a stiffer cymbal and also for the sound. I like a looser one personally for reasons that will also show up later in the other chapters of the video today. Speaking of, Chapter 2, we're talking about the tilting mechanism underneath the bottom hi-hat cymbal. Why is it there? What's it for? Maybe we know, maybe we don't, but sound-wise, what is the point of this? We're going to dive right into it. If you've ever seen orchestral cymbal players with the piatti cymbals, crashing them together, you may note that they never slam them straight face to face. The reason is because you get air stuck in there and no sound comes out, basically. So there's varying degrees and techniques of angled attacks between those two cymbals, and we have the same thing built into even a lot of the earliest hi-hat stands to make sure that when we use our foot to play them, we're not trapping air inside and we're allowing the cymbals to play each other and give us a good sound. Now this goes both for the closed chick sound and also for any kind of foot splashing that we want to do. First, let's hear just the straight up foot chick sound, first with the bottom cymbal tilted and then with the tilter disengaged. As you can see, basically one of them makes a chick sound and one of them makes kind of a whoomp whoomp sound that even against brushes really doesn't give you much of anything. Now the other side of this is if we want to splash them with our foot, we need that bottom cymbal to be tilted at least a little bit so that they meet and break off from each other like that. And in the context of a groove, especially in jazz or maybe in some Latin styles, things like that where you want to have this kind of splashy sound, being able to do that with your foot is a wonderful texture to be able to add to brush grooves, stick grooves. And finally, chapter 3, the spring adjustment. Now, this is kind of a playability thing. It's also something to know about that you may be able to just kind of set and forget when you have maybe one or two hi-hat cymbal sets that you use that are in a similar weight range. The reason why we have this adjustment on here is so that we can adjust the spring tension of the post, the whole mechanism, for the weight of the top cymbal. The bottom cymbal is not involved in this at all. This is just about how quickly the top cymbal gets away from the bottom cymbal when you take your foot off of the pedal. This works in a couple of different ways, and there are sort of sweet spots for this stuff, but first we're going to start out with my regular pair of hi-hat cymbals right here. This is the old K top and the Masterworks bottom that's been on probably half the videos that we've shot here. I've had them for, I don't know, 15, 20 years. And then we're going to leave this alone and put some fairly beefy modern 15s on there. And you'll be able to see that the spring is starting to struggle to get the 15s up at any kind of like usable rate. Now I've gotten down underneath and I've adjusted the spring to try to manage the 15s a little bit better. And as you'll see when we switch back to the 14s, if I take my foot off, you can actually hear the spring hit inside of it, which will be audible in microphones, and also doesn't feel really great because if you have to use that much weight to keep them shut, that's more tension in your leg that you just don't need. Now, I rarely have to adjust the spring tension in my rig here because the cymbals that I use, even though I have a few different sets, there's only maybe like 100 gram or 200 grams difference between the different tops that I use. They have a different sound, but if I need to get louder, I'm usually just changing out the bottom cymbal because it does elevate the volume so much while still giving me the feel of the top that I'm used to. Now, a couple of little asides that people have also asked about since we're talking about hi-hat stands. Thing number one is, if your stand is being sluggish, especially at lower tensions on the spring, and you feel like there's something gumming up the works, I see a lot of people trying to lubricate inside of the stand, trying to lubricate the post, trying to lubricate other things. 9 times out of 10, what it actually is that your post is ever so slightly bent and it's getting caught on its way out of the top part of the shaft, and that means that you're just getting a rub in there that no amount of WD-40 or Tri-Flow or anything else grease is going to fix. So if you take your stand apart, which is to say leave the post in and take the top part of the stand itself off over it, look at it, maybe unscrew this and roll it on the floor, check and see if it's straight. Most backline kits in New York, they're not straight. I've straightened these over my knee at gigs more times than I can count. And it is really worth knowing that if you want to experiment with lower tensions on the spring, you're going to need this to be fluid. So if you're getting any resistance in there, get inside the stand and make sure that you're not getting any kind of rub inside of any of it. And side point number 2, keyholing. Keyholing is what happens when you basically have the threads from a screw somewhere rubbing metal away from the hole in the center of your cymbal, making it start to resemble a keyhole, which is to say a round hole with a sort of narrower thing going down away from it, just like a literal keyhole. I've seen plenty of keyholed hi-hat cymbals. I haven't seen a lot of modern cymbals that have been keyholed, and the reason for that is most modern clutches don't have threading where the cymbal sits. That means that even though it's metal on metal, as long as there isn't screw threading there, you're not going to be able to rub anything away because it's smooth metal on smooth metal. It doesn't need tape, it doesn't need a sleeve, nothing like that. However, if you take your clutch apart, take all the screws and felts off, and there's threading where the cymbal sits, and you'll see that it will have been rubbed by the cymbal, I recommend finding a clutch for yourself, and they're not too expensive, that doesn't have threading there. The Remos are my favorite because they don't have threading below the top screw at all. They're just smooth all the way up, and they also have a quick release mechanism, which I think is very clever. All right. I hope you made it to the end of all of that. That was super fun. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. I hope that these things influence your choices and make you experiment a little bit with your stand. And also checking out, like, even if your stand is doing what you want it to do. I actually brought my own from home, my DW stand, which is not a particularly fancy stand, regular 3-leg, single brace, simple guy, does the job. This is probably the instrument where the stand has the most influence on the behavior and the sound and the playing feel of it. You know, a cymbal on a stand is a cymbal on a stand, a drum on a stand. Largely, it's a drum on a stand, but there's so much that you can kind of micro adjust in there to make yourself happy and get the most mileage out of those cymbals. Yeah, just take a run at it and see what you find.